And I'll start with Steven. Just to keep it short as well, who do you think is the bigger obstacle to peace then, Israel or Palestine from that, the Palestinian people rather, from all this conversation we had?
Fuck it. Okay, sorry. Okay, as quick as I can. I would say that on paper, when it comes to like the actions of a person, I think that the Palestinians have never left a solid peace deal on the table for Israel to accept, because the right of return is always kept open, vague discussion on holy sites. So I would say, like, in that sense, the Palestinians have been an obstacle in that they've never really had a strong negotiating partner for the Israelis to look to. But I would say in terms of like moral responsibility or size, I would say that Israel has the ability to force peace on that region. If at one point you got another Barak, another Rabin that was like, we're going to fucking figure this shit, another Sharon, we're going to figure this shit out, it would happen. That Israel could force that in a way that everybody would eventually
force
be okay
that? Do
with.
you mean unilaterally, like in 2005?
Yes. Basically, that Israel could
happened?
say, this is...
Yeah, we took people from their own places, their own homes, and we see what happened.
Yeah, but it was a half measure. That was the issue, right? Because they didn't leave for the West Bank. They only left the Gaza Strip.
Well, that was an experiment, so that's what happened,
Do you think the results would have been different if Israel left both the Gaza Strip and the West Bank? It would have been somehow better?
I think so. I think significantly so. Sharon thought so. I think it would have been different, for sure. I would say maybe it would have been better, probably would have been better, because there'd be so much less moral authority than on the side of the Arab, on the side of the Palestinians to fight.
No, because,
hey, listen,
I disagree. I'm sorry. Go on. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I understand. But I feel like if Israel wanted to force some peaceful thing almost unilaterally, or at the very least, they could go to the table unilaterally and say, this is what we're going to do, like figure this shit out. And then there would be significant pressure from the surrounding Arab states on the Palestinians to be like, hey, like, don't fuck up again, like, accept something. And there'd be real pressure, not kind of the lip service that's paid. So I think there's a shared responsibility. I think on paper, the Palestinians have just never left a solid deal on the table, but the state of Israel is so mighty and powerful that if they wanted to really force some peaceful arrangement, they would, but they're happy to kind of like watch the conflict carry out and continue on because they keep getting more stuff as a result of that. Yeah, that's my feeling.
Dolan, if you can respond.
So I kind of agree with some of what he said, but I think I kind of fell apart at the end there with the look. I think, Destiny, that you're underestimating the strength of the right of return culture in Palestinian society. I think a forced solution in the 67 lines could very, very well have led to an attempt and a revival, in a sense, to finally liberate holy Palestine.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. I feel like if that would have been the case, if the sentiment for that would have been there, then October 7th would have involved everybody in the Palestinian world rising up, and it didn't. Regardless of regardless of the feelings of the PA,
the army operates in the West Bank, and it arrests people affiliated with terrorism and with Hamas. And that's not to say that there's entirely zero Hamas in Judea and Samaria, but you can't reach the same level of operational organization because the Israeli army is present, because there's Israeli population present.
I mean, the Israeli army was present throughout all of Israel for the Second Intifada, right? But I mean, there were tons of attacks in Israel proper, tons of bus explosions and everything else.
Yeah, but it's not the same. It's not the same kind of advanced and coordinated operation that we've seen on the 7th of October.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just saying that if the propensity for, or if the appetite for violence was that deep or pervasive in the Palestinian world, I feel like there's a path forward, but it would require a big move on the part of one side. I wish it would come from the Palestinian side, because it seems like it has to come, when it comes to Israel and Palestine, it has to come from the Israeli side. But I guess my question is, like, it sounds like like you said earlier, I was being idealistic, but I feel like I'm being more realistic, because my counter to you, and I'm curious what you would say, is I feel like you're being idealistic and assuming that this could stay open forever, because I feel like, was it Rabin, I think, who said, I wish that Gaza would just break off and drift into the sea, because it's like, fuck, like this is never going to be solved. Like, in your mind, like, what is the end to this conflict? Because when I talk to when I talk to both sides, it's funny because you say this thing, and Palestinians say the same thing to me because when I'm arguing with them, I sound like a crazy Zionist. And then when I argue with you guys, some people say, "Oh, you're a left-wing cuck." It feels like both
I
sides
didn't
are
say
like,
that.
I agree with. I know, but both sides are like, I agree with everything you say, Destiny. You were so right when you were talking about my side, but when you talk about the other side, you were completely wrong in everything. And it feels like both sides are like, yeah, this situation will eventually solve itself, and I just don't ever see that happening. How do you see it ending? I guess, yeah.
So wait, there's actually three questions here. Do you want me to respond to the accusation of bias, or to how I see it resolved, or to, I don't even remember what the third thing was.
Oh yeah, not even when I say bias, I just mean like in okay, so here's a statement and then the question. So in 48, no matter which side would have won, I get it. I would get it. I say, okay, sure. If and it sucks, post Holocaust, post Balfour Declaration and guarantees, if all the Jews would have been wiped out, you're like, oh, okay, I get it. It sucks,
Yeah.
but man,
We tried and we
it
failed.
would have been over, right?
Yeah.
yeah, and if the Jews would have, taken all of the mandatory Palestinian area and kicked out every single Arab, I mean, especially at that time, nobody talks about it, but Turkey, did all of this, 100 times over.
Yeah.
And nobody gives a fuck. And if Israel did, I'm like, I don't know, okay, yeah, I get it.
And the Czech
yeah,
Republic.
I mean, like post,
And Russia.
yeah, yeah,
China.
Begin brought this up when he was talking to Carter. Like, I know how you guys did. Yeah. So I would have gotten that too, right? I can understand. I get the justifications of both sides, but now we're here at this point. And my question is both sides have all the justification, moral justification they can find in history. And arguably they could, yeah, maybe, sure. But where does it end? Like, how do you see it ending, even if you feel like you have some moral justification to continue? Like, how do you see this ever finalizing, like in your mind? What's like the pathway to that?
Right. So it might be a lame answer, but I don't really see a path. I think ideally what we could do is always take the next step that seems best, and hope that over a long stretch of time, by improving the situation gradually, we could reach some sort of resolution.
By education more or what?
Not necessarily. I mean, maybe.
Or talking to the moderate people in the Palestinian guys?
I mean, look, if I guess it comes back to what I've said before, right? About how by having the normalization treaties and expanding the Abraham Accords, you also, in a weird sense, also increase the leverage of certain voices in Palestinian society, right? So, if it's the obvious best move, then you should take it. And if it's obviously not a great move, then you should avoid it. And hopefully down the line that would lead to a better world. And I think there's a lot to be said also philosophically about that when you have this sort of end goal vision, the sort of utopian vision style of even National Socialism and communism. These are ideologies that had a very clear end goal in sight, and maybe you just can't plan that far because you're missing a lot of dangerous and very deadly stuff along the way, and maybe you should just focus on making things a bit better at a time. So I don't really have a solution for you for a resolution because it's too far away now. I can't see it. But what I can see is that obviously you should do more of a good thing. Then you should obviously normalize. You should obviously not let Islamic extremists on your borders, and you should definitely not do any move that's based on some ideal hope that it will solve everything when you have a lot of evidence that it really won't.
So wrap it up, Stephen, as well, so we can go to the other subject.
I think I like the idea of kind of like some people call this great man theory, but sometimes there are important people in history, important ideas. I think sometimes there's stuff. Like, I feel like the start of the United States, I feel like that was a pretty stupid, crazy idea. The idea that you would make a democracy, you vote for people, no kings. I feel like when you look at the start of Israel, I feel like on paper, everything about this was basically the dumbest idea imaginable. The first two aliyahs failed miserably.
Right.
You're going to a place, I think initially Herzl didn't even want people to speak Hebrew. Like, that seemed like a stupid idea. The first two waves of people that went to the Levant, they just left afterwards because it sucked. The land was like atrocious. There's not enough water. It's hostile. Everything, like, all of these reasons for why it's a bad idea could be there. But like, there was an idea, there was a cohesive, understanding of what the plan was, and in a relatively impossible way, like, something emerged that ended up working because of the commitment to those ideals. And there are a whole bunch of reasons why it should have never worked, right? Especially Like the project is already like in my opinion, like if I was in the 1800s, I would say what a stupid idea. And then if you were to tell me, well, 50 years later, half your population is going to be deleted as well, it's okay. Well, obviously this is the dumbest idea imaginable. But but it still ends up working because of a really strong commitment to that ideal.
But it takes two to tango, right?
Sometimes it does, but okay. So